the Steflos. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite weapons in the game. It's kind of mid, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you that right up front. The only reason you're using this weapon is because it looks and sounds great. This is for the person who has everything, and they just want to use something that's fun and that can, like, be viable. So we'll start off with the reload. This is one of the best things about this weapon. Look at this. Looks and sounds amazing. You know a weapon's good when its reload is cool, right? The fire rate. It's got basically over double the fire rate of the Tenet Archiplasmor, so you don't need mods specifically for fire rate. It always helps, but you don't want to, like, build completely around getting fire rate like you kind of would with the Archiplasmor. Now, it does have a gimmick where, you see how it doesn't have very long range? Well, now let me hit a dude, and it's going to go berserk. Now it'll go all the way. So each hit adds 50% range to it, basically. From my understanding, say you have projectile speed, kind of works like a Bane, the passive, in the sense that it'll add to that. So that's cool, I guess. But so the main thing with this weapon is that it can shoot down entire hallways and make sure to hit everything. It has base heat, so you don't need to add the heat to it. It just has that base. Now these enemies I would equate to about an hour of Steel Path Lua survival, which is how I like to, that's my litmus test, is doing an hour survival on Lua and seeing if it scales all the way. If it scales away to the hour mark and you're not having difficulties, then I'd say the weapon is viable, because most of the time people aren't even doing hour-long missions anyway. So I really don't see the point in going to level 999 when I know it's just gonna be exactly what I expected it to be, you know? So as you can see, with full armor, without any buffs, it's kind of having some difficulties. The ammo, I just ran out there. The ammo's not really too big of a deal when you have all your stacks, and when there's some, like, not impressive enemies to harm. But, so, this is a viral slash build. Let's start with adding some armor strip, because typically you would use this with some armor strip. When you have armor strip with it, it'll just kill them in one shot, right? You can say that with pretty much damn near any weapon, that if you're using armor strip, it makes any weapon good. And that's kind of one of the areas I see this weapon excelling over many other weapons, is that, sure, any weapon with armor strip will make the weapon insane, but this weapon's passive allows it to hit everything down the corridor, and hit everything in general. So if you're able to armor strip large swaths of the environment, which some frames and some builds can, it'll ensure that everything's dead. And again, you're mainly using this because it's fun, right? It looks flashy, it sounds really cool. You're not using this because you think it's the best weapon. We're doing a copium build. So I am using a Bane, and we're also going to add some viral now. Viral and a little bit of armor strip on some of them so that we can get our stacks really quick. So I'm not going to take my pet off. My pet is applying puncture, impact, electric, and gas. A lot of people measure things in a vacuum and they think like, oh, well, this is garbage because it's garbage by itself. This is definitely a weapon that was made to be used with other things, be it frame buffs like Wisp or, you know, Inaros or what have you, or not Inaros, Harrow. It's definitely meant to be used in other things. Part of that, too, is that the Riven dispo for this weapon will go up. I can assure you that the Riven dispo for this weapon will go up, but unfortunately it does about a third, maybe like a third and a half, the damage of the Tenet Archiplasmor, so it does significantly less damage. It has more fire rate, and it also has a faster reload. The Tenet Archiplasmor has a 0.8 fire rate and a 3.0 reload, but its damage is much higher. Let's look at the base damage for the Steflos. You see it's 320. For the Tenet Archiplasmor, it's about 760, and that is before taking into account the extra 60% of that radiation number is being added in extra damage. Plus, this can also fulfill the role of taking up another element or adding to an element, thus freeing up a mod slot or affecting your build in some sort of way. So the Steflos is lacking in that, which is unfortunately, but it does have base heat. Now, I'm going to examine Rivens, so if you are looking for a Riven guide, this will guide you a little bit, hopefully. So it has base heat, and speaking of Rivens, you really want the minus impact. So you see how the base heat is 190 with my current build. If I take this off, it's really going to be struggling, and it's going to be competing with 130. So 130 impact versus it would have had, like, it would have been getting a lot more impact. So it's imperative that any Riven you get for this has minus impact. That is literally the main thing. Maybe one day they will buff impact, but it's kind of doubtful because some of the mods that convert impact into slash, which there's none for the shotgun yet, are extremely powerful and insane. And if they do ever add one, it would completely kill the Steflos because the Tenet Archiplasmor force procs the impact status. So hopefully they don't buff impact for Steflos users' sake, because it would make the weapon even worse in comparison. So we are using a Bane. This is making it so that our weapon is basically double dipping. It's applying to the initial hit of the weapon, and then it's also applying to the status proc, so it's a lot more damage. It's much, that corrupted damage mod or whatever it is a lot more than primed point blank. We're testing it on Grenier. I should have Grenier on. That's the only problem though, is it having to switch it. Now as far as, we're going to go back to talking about Rivens. So I am a bit of a Riven collector for this weapon. As I said, the Riven dispo will assuredly go up. But as of the grendle patch, which this Riven did go up this patch, the ideal god roll percentages, as just the percentages for the minus impact, the lowest I've seen this patch is minus 72% impact. So you really want to get a high 80s, low 90s percent minus impact Riven, because the percentages do matter, and it changes from Riven to Riven. Yeah, I'm sure if you had just a 2 positive and 1 negative, it could probably get 100% negative impact, which would be awesome, but it is what it is. So as for a certified god roll on a Riven for the Steflos, you would definitely want multi-shot toxin, minus impact, and then of course the plus critical chance is not certified god roll. You would want plus critical damage for that. That would be the certified god roll. I wouldn't even argue the plus damage. Plus damage would be nice. I would rather that over the critical chance. But unfortunately, this is as close as I could get to a god roll after all these Rivens. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering, because of this weapon's unique passive, if you should get projectile speed for the weapon. So let me show you what it looks like just firing normally. I'm going to line myself up at the center thing here, and just firing with, you know, just the standard build that you would have on any shotgun. It goes just past that podium there, and notice the size of it. It's pretty girthy. When I add projectile speed to it, it looks as if it's getting smaller. And I've tested it with a friend standing at the opposite side of it to compare the size. We compared sizes. It's not actually getting smaller. I guess it's the perspective and how it's shooting out faster. But see, it looks way smaller. It's not actually smaller, but this is probably going to about like the corner of the stage. That those things are not on the foot, but like the corner of it, versus before it was only going to the podium. So it's the range adding to this basically is just ensuring you get that first hit, because if you don't get any hit, it's not going to go the distance. As long as you hit like one thing, it's pretty much guaranteed to hit other things. So I've seen people question on if they should specifically aim for the projectile speed on this weapon. I would say no. It's not like, you know, it's not like a death sentence if you get it, but I wouldn't specifically aim for it. Now, some people specifically want to aim for fire rate on their Rivens, because look, this is doubling my fire rate. I wouldn't. Again, this already has over double the fire rate of the Tenet Archiplasmor. So if you're one of those people who's used to the Archiplasmor and you don't even have fire rate on it, which is insane, you should have fire rate on it, this is going to feel amazing to you. So it's not, again, it's not bad to get plus fire rate on your Steflos. This is it without the plus fire rate. It still fires very nice in my opinion. More fire rate is nice though, not going to lie. So as for Rivens, again, you want the toxin, I'm telling you, Toxin, because you can build it in multiple different ways. Multi-shot and critical damage with minus impact. Now, the two builds today, this is the one we were just looking at. This is the Viral Slash. Again, it has the innate heat. And then the other build we're going to be taking a look at is the Corrosive. The Corrosive, we will not use the Bane. As for my testing, I guess it's because of the Corrosive status effect, or maybe it's just in my head. The Bane doesn't seem to be performing as well as just raw critical damage for this specific instance. I'm using, and when I say specific instance, it's because the other stuff we're using to make the weapon good. I'm using Grendel and I'm using a bot. The bot I'm using is applying several different statuses. Because our Grendel is able to use Nourish and give us extra viral, we don't need viral on our bot companion spreading status thing. So this is applying gas, electricity, puncture, and impact. It's not very difficult to get the Hellstrom. I am using a God Roll Riven for it. This weapon is not to do damage, so a minus faction is harmless as far as I'm concerned. I'm just wanting it to spread the statuses, and this is spreading a lot of statuses. I'm not removing this off. It will influence our testing, but again, we want to show this at its like peak performance. So by turning this off, we wouldn't be seeing it at its peak performance now, would we? So it is a copium build because we really want to push this kind of middlingly lukewarm weapon into being good. And that's part of what leads me to Grendel. We're using Grendel because, again, he has Nourish, only he gets extra benefits with Nourish, being he can heal himself, which isn't really that big, and his this allows us to get more viral procs when stuff shoots us. Nothing's going to be shooting us, so it doesn't really matter, but normally it only provides one viral stack, but on Grendel, because it's his ability, it provides more. Interesting little fun fact. We also have two abilities that are fully armor stripping. I'm not going to use the Regurgitate because whenever you armor strip something, any wet noodle can fucking kill them. So the toxin damage from this is sufficient to kill a lot of enemies, so I'm going to be using the Pulverize to just fully armor strip several enemies. Build doesn't matter. Build Grendel however you like. But we're mostly just using it for the armor strip and the Nourish. You could also throw on Arcane Avenger or Arcane Rise for even more damage, but this is sufficient to get the build cranking without making every single thing on the build specific towards buffing your as a weapon platform. So this is the weapon just shooting. We saw earlier, feel free to jump around the video, but we saw the viral does a little bit better at killing the weapons at base without any sort of like buffs and whatnot, like frame buffs or companion doing stuff. The Viral Slash is going to be better in a vacuum. Now again, we're not playing in a vacuum, we're trying to get it all cranking. So I'm going to armor strip some of these guys, and now it's going to kill them a lot faster, which is going to get our arcane shotgun thing cranking a lot higher. So once most of your stuff is cranking, you can pretty much one-shot anything with its armor stripped. So there's a caveat there where it needs to have its armor stripped, but a lot of your fodder enemies will die very easily without that armor stripping. So now we're going to suck some guys up, and I'm going to add extra viral to this, rather. So this is a Viral Slash with Nourish. So the Nourish is adding more damage, and it's adding more viral. So pretty impressive. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to also add the additional element of having them armor stripped, so that we can kind of see this at max. Again, like you could put a couple different arcanes on this that allow it to do even more than what we're doing right now. Oops, I didn't. There you go. But as you can see, once it's armor stripped, you one-shot it, and then everything else falls very easily. So now that was the Viral Slash, which if you're using Nourish, I believe that you don't really need the Viral Slash. If you're going to use Nourish, then I would definitely swap on over to this bad boy here, the Raw Damage Corrosive. So let us spawn these guys back up. We're going to do the same thing. We already saw me shooting at just base enemies, how it didn't really do much at first, so I'm going to suck these guys up, spit them out. So now we're going to see it with just Nourish. Actually, let me armor strip a couple enemies so that we can get our stack up. or arcane rather. But once you get the stacks cranking on the corrosive heat build instead of the pyro slash, it is a lot better, in my opinion. But part of it too is that we are using the additional armor strip. The armor strip is really the main thing. The armor strip allows the Steflos to really shred anything. You could say that about a lot of things in this game, where stripping armor makes anything kill it, but again, I want to just reiterate until your ears bleed that I want to use the Steflos because it looks cool, it sounds cool, and it's fun. We're not using this as like, it's the best weapon in the game. So this was like the most viable I could make the weapon. I did try out some other builds where like corrosive, and what was it, rad? I've tried all different sorts of element combinations, and I just feel like this one is the best. Part of what's limiting is that some people always like to try corrosive cold because they work very well together. You can't with this because it'll turn into blast because of this extra element here. So because it has heat on it, you are a little bit limited in terms of what sorts of builds you can do, which is another downside. But as I said, the Riven dispo will surely go up for this weapon, and if it ever gets up to 5, then this could actually be an extremely good weapon as opposed to like a milquetoast lukewarm weapon. So I'm gonna just compare it against pretty much the same corrosive heat build, but for an Arcoplasmor, and we're just gonna see how much of a difference it is. I am going to ball up and kill a few, or get armor strips so I can kill them, just so we can get the stacks up very quick, so we're not like wasting an hour just trying to get our stacks up really quick. It was shooting a wall there, but it's not unheard of to kill stuff with the ricochet, but it does a lot more. And now that we're pretty much fully stacked, we'll go down here and not shoot off a wall. And this is without, you know, any buffs. The Tenet Arcoplasma will pretty much one-hit everything forever. So it is still the little brother of the Tenet Arcoplasmor, and it's not as good as like the Boar Incarnate or many other weapons, but if you want to use a weapon that's fun, flashy, and people will be like, wow, that's a cool weapon, what are you using? Especially because I name my weapons. The Steflos is for you, but if you're looking for like the best shotgun in the game, you can stick to your same old with the Boar, with the Strun, with the Tenet Arcoplasmor. But some people want to have something a little bit more nuanced, flashy, and fun, and if that's what you want, then I can't recommend the Steflos enough for you, especially because of all the weapons I just mentioned, all the shotguns. The Steflos is probably one of the cheaper shotguns to get into. People who are charging $1 million for Steflos Rivens are novices who don't know what they're doing, whereas the markets for these other weapons are so flooded that it's very easy to find cheap Rivens, even though they're technically worth a lot more just because of how flooded they are. So don't let it get to you if you go looking for a Steflos Riven and people charge a lot. It's not actually worth that much. People are just doing that because they perceive it as being rare. And it's not actually rare. If you browse the markets a lot, there are a lot of people selling Steflos Rivens, but the only reason it seems rare is because most people have them in their bundle. Like when you see people saying, hey, I have over 5,000 Rivens, message me as to what you need, those are usually the people who have them. So most of my Rivens I was able to get for pennies and roll them myself in terms of these Steflos Rivens. So again, don't overspend for them. A God roll, if this was crit damage, multi-shot toxin minus impact, I would probably value it around 3k, 3.5k. That may seem like a lot for some of you. It's not actually a lot to many Riven traders. Like a lot of people would laugh at me for having under 10k, and I feel kind of weird being under 10k, so I don't blame them for laughing at me. So if offering 3.5k seems like an astronomical fee to you, I don't blame you. A lot of people see even 1000k as a lot, but when you've been trading for a long time, it's not really too much if you know how to get plat and whatnot. But in general, I would say an unrolled is 20 to 50p, and a God roll would be anywhere from 1000 to 3500p is where I would place it. So if you feel like you liked this video or learned anything, feel free to go on the Googs and look up BlackRock and see how they're pretty much destroying our society, and it's the why movies and businesses are acting in the ways that they're currently acting right now. You know what I'm talking about. You're smart. You're watching Steflos videos.